Okay. At this point of Mission to the Stars, we find that Alec and Ed have been captured. Ed is a friend of theirs that is helping them out. He was actually Alex's mentor in the police department when Alex was in Chicago. Zach and Orion have found their way back to Earth and are trying to devise a way to get them out. Ty has also been captured but is being held at a different location. Earlier, we find that Senator Toma, who has divided loyalties between Senator Axion and now helping the Bindles, has slipped into the cell and given Ed a device which has been hidden. Joanne is Ty's receptionist, who is a little more bold, and she is going to help out in the situation. Joanne drove her hover right up to the gate when she arrived at the Meteoric installation. She was nervous. Had Toma held his end of the deal? If he hadn't, She shook the thought from her head, took a few deep breaths, and lowered the window. "Your credentials, ma'am," the guard ordered. They were hanging from her neck, so she slid them off and gave them to him. Identification? She fumbled through her handbag and produced her picture ID. She tried not to look nervous. He left with the items and disappeared into the guard shack while two more guards stood in front of her vehicle, weapons at the ready. She smiled at the two men and pretended to fuss with her hair. The man returned from the shack and handed the items back to her, then motioned to the two guards in front. They dropped their weapons to their sides and stepped aside as the large steel gate opened. Joanne placed the pass back around her neck and dropped the ID into her bag, then drove her hover through. A few minutes later, she was parked in front of a small building. She exited the hover and headed toward the entrance. Upon entering the building, she was stopped by two more guards. She lifted the pass from around her neck and displayed it to them. They stepped aside and she headed down the staircase. When she came to a large steel door, she tapped a comm button on the bulkhead next to it. A wicket door slid open and a pair of eyes peered through. Again, she raised the pass. With a loud click, the door opened. Feeling more nervous than she'd ever felt, she walked into the small area. Two more guards met her. She identified herself, and they opened another heavy steel door. The filth and smells confronting her almost made her retch. Composing herself, she entered the large, dark room, and the door shut behind her. She could make out 3 cells, but only 2 were occupied. A figure in each stirred as she made her way over to them. She stopped short and called out softly, "Ed? Alec? It's Joanne." Both men reached the front of their cells at the same time. Alec couldn't believe his eyes. "Joanne, what are you doing here? Are you out of your mind?" He noticed she was dressed in a business suit and heels. Not the best outfit for a place like this. She heard the despair in his tone. "I wanted to check on you both, and when I heard you were being held at the same location, I thought I needed to make every effort to see you. Senator Toma helped arrange my visit." Her eyes were slowly adjusting to the lack of light, and she could see that the two men had been abused, repeatedly. She wanted to cry, but restrained herself. Ed reached out, and she took his hand. "I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but they have Ty, too. I don't know where he is. Have you talked with Zach and Orion? We hear they've been captured as well." She squeezed his hand ever so slightly. "No, I haven't seen them, nor have I talked with them." She squeezed again. "Are they hurt? Do you at least know that?" Again, a squeeze. "No, I just don't know anything about where they may be or how they are." The tone of her voice as she spoke and the slight squeezes finally got across to Ed that the two boys weren't captive. Her being there could not be a coincidence. "I'm sorry, but I can't stay any longer. It isn't permitted. I'll try to stay in touch as much as I can, and if by chance I see Zach or Orion, I'll tell them you said hello." With one last squeeze at the mention of their names, she let go of Ed's hand. She reached through Alec's cell and tenderly rubbing his hand said, "It'll be okay. It really will." She turned one last time to Ed and gave him a sinister smile and a small, almost imperceptible nod. Ed was taken aback for an instant. Then it hit. This was the moment. She was here to rescue them. Out of all the people it could have been, it was Joanne. His mind ran overtime. There was no time to strategize. He'd have to go with whatever Joanne had planned. He moved to the back of the cell and leaned against the wall, hands behind his back, and started to loosen the brick. She made her way to the steel door. As she knocked, Alec and Ed noticed her pull her right foot back, then swing it forward, hitting the long heel on the ground. It broke, but hung precariously from the shoe. She glanced back and smiled mischievously. Then, once more, she turned to the door. The guard opened it to find Joanne standing on her left foot with her right leg bent backward at the knee. She was hanging onto the door frame with her left hand. Can you believe it? I broke a heel. As the guard bent down to look, she reached down, broke off the heel, pressed a small hidden button. A long, thin blade emerged from the heel. With incredible speed and deadly precision, it found its way into the unsuspecting guard's forehead with a sickening thud. He fell to the floor, blood trickling around the implanted knife blade. While Joanne was disabling the guard, Ed had removed the device from its hiding place and placed it on the lock of the cell. It was one of Zach's nano devices. The nanobots had the cell unlocked by the time the guard hit the floor. With blinding speed, Ed placed himself next to Joanne as the next guard came through. Before the guard could take a breath, Ed enveloped him in a headlock, and with a quick twist and a noticeable crack, Ed broke the guard's neck. The body fell next to his partner's. Ed glanced at Joanne. She just shrugged sheepishly. He could only smile. Alex watched in shocked silence. Coming around, he said, "Excuse me? But if you two are going on a killing spree, I'd like to get out of here first." Ed located the keys on one of the dead men and moved to unlock Alex's cell. Alex exited. "What next?" he asked, looking directly at Joanne. Ed removed the nano device from his cell lock and placed it into his pants pocket. He was the one to answer. "Why, we escape, of course." He walked over and gave Joanne a hug. Then, holding her away at a short distance, he grinned. Incredible. Just incredible. He let go, bent down, and grabbed the weapons lying on the ground. He tossed one to Alec and kept one for himself. "Would I be wrong in guessing that you're packing?" he asked Joanne. "Who, me?"